Today on Locked On Red Wings, Liam Greentree is one of many projected to be available in the teens at the draft, but does he make sense for Detroit?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm formerly a broadcast producer for 97.1 The Ticket, where Scotty's the host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Scotty, we are very happy to be joined today by Sean Shapiro of, pick one of many of the things he does. You want Expected by Whom? That's one I think a lot of people are going to know you from, especially after that Jake Wollman interview.
Yeah, I have a very, I have a lot of jobs. I've got main one that's been super busy right now has been I do a lot of stuff with the folks and the guys over at Elite Prospects and EP Ringside, the editorial arm of that, and so I've been. In addition to everything else, I've been in the junior hockey world for the last 6-7 days up at the Memorial Cup here in Saginaw, and be at the final on Sunday, which is going to be a real fun event. And then on top of that, the other big thing, and it's kind of fun to talk prospects this time because a lot of this is all fresh in my mind. On Monday, actually, the Elite Prospects draft guide comes out on Monday, so we will have the big guide comes out Monday, and it's a huge one, and there's people I only do partial work on that. There's some other people that put hours and hours and hours into it, but it's kind of getting over the finish line. It's all hands on deck right now.
Well, I'm glad we could grab you at your absolute busiest time to come talk to us for 25 to 30 minutes. That being said, Scotty, unless you got something you wanna add real quick.
No, I'm ready to roll, man.
Awesome. Today we're going to be covering Liam Greentree. He played this past season with the Windsor Spitfires, and I'm straight up just reading off Elite Prospects, Sean. 6'2", 198 pounds, has him listed as a right wing who shoots left, and in 64 games played, he had 90 points with the Spitfires while donning the C with the team, 36 goals, 54 assists. When it comes to Liam Greentree, Sean, what is the biggest assets that he brings to the table?
So, I mean, right off the bat, you mentioned him. You kind of mentioned his stats and his year. So he's an 18-year-old captain of an OHL team on a really, really bad OHL team. Like, Windsor was not good this year, and they had the number one pick in the OHL priority draft and everything like that because of it. So he did all of his work on a very bad team, and he was the central focus for many opponents. So that to me is one of the things that's most intriguing to me about it, is we saw what he did without much help. I'm really interested to see, as Windsor should be a little bit better, as they kind of add some other pieces, he should be a better player next year. That's kind of I expect that. To me, he is he's a playmaker. He can make highlight reel plays. He can draw your attention. He makes even, like, you'll see he makes big plays on goals and everything that will make highlight reels. But like, I like watching him play throughout the entire game. There's little skillful plays you see in the defensive zone, through the neutral zone. He kind of fits that classic example where if he was a better skater, we're probably not talking about him in the Red Wings range at 15. That's really the big thing, where you're talking about a skill over you're talking skill over technical skating ability, and that's why he's going to be around 15. And I think whoever gets him, I think that they're going to have a real nice chance to see something pop with this kid, because I think skating can get better. Skill and decision-making he has, those are some of the things you can't teach when I look at his game.
Well, I mean, there's a lot that I want to cover with him. I'm very fascinated by the profile, and one of the things that jumps out at me is kind of alluding to what you just said there, like every breakdown and like all the tape and whatnot on him, it's all like overwhelmingly positive. And then they're like, oh yeah, he'll be there at like 15. And it's like, well, there's not very many negatives out there on him. And you just mentioned skating there. I mean, I don't want to say just like in general, what kind of a ceiling are we talking about? But like, if it truly is just one kind of key part in his game, albeit in a very important one,
Yeah.
Is that truly the only reason that he's not like higher on draft boards? Because everything else seems to be just like so positive with him.
So the other key question to kind of trying to take into account for him is he plays more than he has to. That's just the reality of how bad Windsor was. And there are long stretches where he's like you mentioned, like there's so much in his game you like. There's not a lot of negatives to find, but there are long, quiet stretches. There will be parts in games where you watch him play if you focus just on him, and it's easy to just see the tape and the highlight and feel like, oh, hey, and it'll be based off 3 or 4 things he did in that game. There's still 6 or 7 other shifts where probably a net zero, didn't really do anything and can be quiet. I don't know, and this is the great kind of draft question for people to figure out. I don't know if that's reflective of team quality, reflective of playing too much. I mean, he had, I think I could probably look this up while we're on here, he had his last stretches of games against his last 2 OHL games of the year were against Saginaw and London, the two teams, one in the semifinal, one already in the final, the Memorial Cup, and he's taken 26 and 22 shifts against 2 of the best junior teams in North America, and he's averaging 21 minutes a night as a forward. There's a lot of time for your game and flaws to be exposed. So on one hand, long stretches where he doesn't do enough, but at the same time, there's a lot of stretches where more flaws could have shown up. It's kind of like a not chicken or the egg. It's kind of like a sliding scale of how you want to look at that effective nothingness at times. It's to me, he's a really interesting guy who I think if he was on a better team, he probably is a little bit, his number's a little bit higher, and he's maybe in the 7 or 8, 9 range. I think at the end of I think there's part of it comes down to the team he's on may have given us too accurate of an indication of what he is at times. And I think sometimes we see guys who go higher because we haven't seen their flaws. Like one of the most interesting ones in the draft is Dickinson from London, right? And like he's a player who everyone could be their second or third defenseman taken in the draft, and I think that London team is so good that it's hard to find flaws in his game. It's hard to find an accurate reflection of the player. I think we have a more accurate reflection of Greentree, and that's one of the reasons he's probably going to be around the 15 area and everything like that.
Absolutely. So my follow-up to that then, though, is when it comes to there's so many forwards in this draft, especially in every draft has a lot of forwards. It's kind of a dumb way to set it up. But, in that 10 to 20 range in particular, you look at a lot of, draft rankings for these prospects, and there's a lot of wingers and a few centers, not a lot of defenders in that 10 to 20 range. So, what can Greentree do, or what does he bring to the table that makes him stand out amongst the sea of other wingers in that range?
Yeah, I mean, he is I'm going to get my notes up here as we're talking about him. That's why my eyes kind of flirt away from the screen as I look over at stuff here. But he does a really good job of finding ways to create space for his skill with and without the puck. And that's another reason why I think he will start to put up more points next year, is because I think Windsor should be a better team that will have more ways for people to create based off what he's doing away from the puck. Right now, there's parts of his game where you see the vision and you can see it, but he's not playing with anyone else who can take advantage of it, if that makes any sense here, right? And so that's one of the things he kind of brings there. He does a really good job moving the puck a little bit right at the right at the point of the attack. He has it's obviously it's not nearly Connor Bedard levels, but Connor Bedard is the simplest, easiest example to talk about. We talk all about Connor Bedard's shot, how the point of attack, the shot point can change at the last millisecond in Fools goalies. And not saying Greentree does that as much as a shooter. He has a good shot. I mean, he did score 36 goals this year, but he does a really good job of changing that and creating angles as a passer and a playmaker when you kind of see that stuff. So to me, he's a guy who can come in. He starts to you work on the skating a little bit, and he could have a really, really bright NHL future. I like him a lot. I personally, and now I don't see, of the players I've seen in person, and so sometimes it's the draft for me is like I really trust a lot of our scouts who see everyone in person and everything like that. But for me, I would have a hard time seeing 14 guys better than him in the draft, really.
Awesome. We're going to do a quick break. When we return, we're going to talk more about like the system. Does he fit with Detroit? As Detroit has a pretty stocked cabinet at this point of prospects. So they can kind of do what they want with that 15th overall pick. So stay tuned for that in segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings. Got to talk to you guys for a moment about Game Time. Game Time makes getting NBA tickets to the finals even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. And with last-minute deals, you can save up to 60% of buying last minute for sports, comedy, theater, and so much more. And those flash deals help you save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event. And of course, all-in pricing allows you to see the total upfront with no surprise fees at the checkout. And that lowest price guarantee means that Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA Finals tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are joined by Sean Shapiro of Expected by Whom, EPR Ringside, let's see, Shap Shots, any number of different things. Men's League Hockey, he does that as well. Also movie star, noted movie star.
Big beer league win last night with Max Boltman and I play on the same Wednesday night team in Troy. We
Nice.
Big win last night, so that's always a good thing to be coming off of.
I saw that Birchie kid snipe. It was a beaut.
Yeah.
So, we're talking about Liam Greentree. Scotty, I think you're up next, though, when it comes to the questions, if you want to do the whole hot potato routine.
I think that, again, like we kind of teased it before the break, I think a big question we have with all of these prospects that we're profiling, obviously, is fit within the Detroit Red Wings system. And one of the biggest things I have asked every single person we've had on to discuss a forward, a very similar question in this regard, but it's just so, I don't know if obvious is the right word, but it just fits the profile so much. And like in the Yzerman era, they really have made it a point to get forwards that they believe can either become or already are sound defensively. Is that something that he fits? Is that a bill that he fits? And overall, is there a fit with him in this organization?
I mean, I think he's a pretty good defensive forward. I mean, on a team that was, I mean, he was not plus minus is not the greatest stat in the world. We all know that, but he was a minus 14 this year on a team that just got absolutely caved in the entire season. So, from my view on his personal game, you look at kind of defensively and talk to Lauren Kelly, one of our OHL scout for EP, and she really likes his game. And I think he has that. I think his defensive game is good enough to kind of grow into an NHL level and be in a spot where the way the Red Wings are building things, and it's the way that it's Steve Yzerman's build and the way that he kind of the reason he hired Derek Lalonde and everything like that is you're looking for how can we be a team that turns defense into offense, play from that. And Greentree to me fits that build. That's kind of what he had to do in Windsor almost in a way where they didn't have the puck a lot. They had to be good. He had to be good defensively. A lot of their chances came that way. So I see a fit as far as where things go. I also think it's the interesting thing about 15, and this is just my big belief on the draft, and I see teams that I look at the teams that are in the Final Four right now, I look at how teams build. I don't think you need to worry. I'm a big believer in just taking the best possible player. Like in the first, like I don't think you worry about fit and system if you're picking in the top 25. I think just there's too many. I think there's and to me, Greentree should still be in the top 15. That's kind of but I think I don't want to get overly caught up in can he play defense, can he do that. I think if you're just taking the best possible player, you will find a way for them to fit in, and that's kind of the way I look at things. Like I see, like we know Dallas, right? They're in the conference final right now. You look at how they drafted. Dallas is a team that in Dallas we always hear about how in 2017 their draft was saved because that was the year they hit 3 home runs in that draft. They got Heiskanen, Ottinger, and Robertson in the same draft. And 2021 they got Stankoven and Johnston. You talk about 2 drafts where they just kind of knocked it out of the park. In both of those drafts, around 2016, 2015, Dallas changed their priority in drafting. They used to be a team that drafted big. And focused on this, and they changed to a team that they believed could. They changed to a team that focused more on individual skill, and that didn't really take it, and that started to take more into effect in the 2019, 2020, 21 drafts. They had the AHL MVP this year, who didn't even only played 1 NHL game. So I would look at that as, are you drafting the best player, the most skilled player? And for me, this is why Greentree should highly be an option at 15.
Well, so that brings me to a follow-up question, too, because you mentioned how the Dallas Stars got away from drafting size. Well, Greentree is a skilled player who also has size, and the Red Wings do have kind of a precedent of drafting guys with size, right? Yeah. Edvinsson, Seider, I mean, granted, those are defenders, but a lot of their guys are well over 6 foot. You know, how does Greentree utilize his size, if at all, in the way he plays his game?
Yeah, I mean, he's not he's big, right? He's not, I don't think he's overly
He's physical. Not Elmer Soderblom.
No, yeah.
In terms of size.
I wouldn't say he's overly physical. I think he uses his size well. He does a good job using it to protect the puck. I think one of the things that a good player, a skilled player with size, can be a good playmaker for others because you're protecting the puck well and drawing space and creating other little pockets, and I think he can do that. But he's not a guy who you're going to go and expect to hitting everything that moves. He's going to be more of if he's using his size to his skill as opposed to the other way around.
You know, one of the things that really, I don't know, stands out, I guess, about him, and this is super not analytical, off the ice type of stuff, but pretty much every single write-up you read on him talks about his, I don't know, mentality or obviously we talked about the captaincy at 18 and whatnot. Is that something that, I don't know, you have insight on or that you have noticed as well? It's just literally in every single write-up. It's he's just got such a mentality on the ice, and people love the way he is in the locker room, et cetera, et cetera. That seems to be a really, honestly, pretty big selling point to his game. Is that something that, obviously it's not going to be the difference between 10 picks in the draft or anything like that, but is that something that I guess you would write down in your notes on him as well?
So that's not untrue about him, but I think, look, there's however many CHL teams there are. There's a lot. There's 18 USHL teams. There's 200 captains available for draft every year. So I think so. I'm not trying to, not saying that's untrue about Greentree, that he works hard, he has this right mentality, but there's so many. I think so often if you're getting caught up in all of the green flags, right, for it, I think it's kind of, you see teams and you kind of look at, there's other players where when they don't fit that box, you kind of become more of that question. Because most guys who are having success as an 18-year-old or they're doing this, that's one of the reasons they're having success. Hockey has been their entire life.
Pick.
Yeah.
You should probably have a good mindset. Yeah.
Exactly. You've worked for this your entire life. So I don't think anyone going in the first round or in that range is in a spot where you're he doesn't have the mentality, he doesn't have it. So it's not a bad thing, but I think if you get overly caught up in falling in love with you want to draft good people, but you're also trying to draft a winning hockey team. And so I think that is I think he's a good kid, he's a good story. but it's not a level where you're like, well, this is something different. I mean, you were going to read on draft day, 32 kids will go in the first round. Everyone wins on draft day. There will be 32 great stories about how this team, like whether it's, you pick whatever team, whether it's even the team picking 30th, you'll hear their scouting director like, oh, we had him as a top 15 talent. Like, everyone wins on draft day. And so someone's going to write, if the Red Wings draft Greentree or whoever drafts Greentree, the first interview, the first story will be all about how great a kid he is, who he was as an 18-year-old as a captain. All good stories, but I can tell you exactly what those stories will be. The kid taking the very next pick might have the exact same story. Right. Like, so it's there's not red flags, so that's good. So
everyone wins on draft day unless you're an Atlanta Falcons fan and your team just drafted a quarterback after signing a quarterback. We're going to head to another quick break. When we return, I want to talk a little bit about not so much Greentree, but the 15th overall pick that the Red Wings have in general, because there's a lot of things that they could be doing, and you cover the Red Wings pretty closely as well. So I want to get your opinion on maybe what you feel they should do with that draft pick. So stay tuned to segment 3 of Locked On Red Wings. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. We're joined by Sean Shapiro of EPO Rinkside and Expected by whom, again, down the line, all the different things that he does. He's all over the place, keeps himself involved. And one of the things you do is cover the Red Wings. Your Shap Shots that is a newsletter that goes out via email. You cover both the Stars and the Red Wings. So you watch the Red Wings really in depth all year long. And so you're in touch with their biggest needs and what they do have. And I want to ask you, with that 15th overall pick and the cabinet as full as it is, what do you feel that is in the best interest of the Red Wings' future that they do with that 15th overall pick, even if it's stand pat and use it at 15, trade back, trade forward, whatever?
I mean, I'm always a big proponent of, if you can trade back a couple picks to pick up a couple more in the top 100, I'm all for that. I mean, not trying to connect everything to Dallas and Detroit, but I mean, that's what Dallas traded back to get Wyatt Johnston, and Detroit took Sebastian Cossa. Like, you look at and I think Cossa took a really nice turn this year, but look what Dallas did in that draft, where they traded back, they picked up another pick, they picked up the Artem Grushnikov in that pick, who they used to trade for Chris Tanev this year. I'm a big believer that if you can go move back 4 or 5 picks to pick up a couple more, that's probably the smart thing to do. Now, it's not necessarily easy to do because everyone knows that's probably a good thing to do. So that's kind of my philosophy on it. As I said earlier, I'm a big believer in you take the best guy available. And like for me, from a Detroit perspective, I'm looking at where they're going to be picking. You're probably going to go, it's going to be a forward. It might be a Helenius. It might be, if Branzig Nygaard is there right now, he might be an option if Greentree's there. But to me, the one way I would kind of differentiate for that, just because it's partial, and it's not just because of the human element, because his brother plays for Detroit. If Buium somehow falls, because people get overly obsessed with his size and it's not that his skating is bad, but there's some scouts who look at his skating as not technically as perfect as it should be. So if Buium is somehow still there around 15, that would be my one kind of differentiator of go away from that forward group, because that would be kind of my approach to that one if I'm looking at this from the Red Wings chair.
Well, I guess that might answer my follow-up question, honestly, but if outside of like the blue chips, like if someone you have projected in like the top 3 or 5 somehow fell, which isn't going to happen, who would you like kind of celebrate the most? I know it's kind of subjective again, because you gotta have to play the game of like who's going to be on the board and who's not, and who's a stretch and who's not. But is that your answer? Like if Buium is the pick, is that like that's awesome to you? Like what? I mean, I guess would be one of your favorite players to land in that spot.
I mean, if you can get Buium at 10, that's great. I don't think he'll make it to 10.
Right.
I mean, sorry, 15. I have him at 10 because I'm on my personal on the list that I was looking at recently. We have him at 10. So if Buium makes it there, great. That would be the big celebration for me. I think the other one that would just be intriguing, because it's, you talk about the namesake and the once again, another guy who won't fall that far, but is probably going to fall farther than people expected, is Cole Iserman, just because the way his hell of a shot. He could shoot in the NHL right now. His overall game is going to be needs a bunch of work. And so, but if you're looking for goal scorers and you're looking for someone you can kind of mold a bit, like if he's available at 15, which I highly doubt, that would be there. I mean, it's, to me, there's a lot of, like, there's Celebrini, there's the Celebrini and Demidov are probably going to go 1 and 2. The defensemen, like, there's probably about 5 or 6 names in this draft where you're like, okay, these are guys I'm all of a sudden my prospect pool is now centered around this. After that, from my perspective, there's not many guys where you're like, okay, this guy instantly becomes any team's top prospect. And that's just a reflection of the draft, right? Like that's kind of how things work. So that's the other reason that if I'm kind of looking at things and I'm Detroit, like, okay, if I can trade back to 18, 19 and get an extra pick, I'm probably getting a similar type player and picking up another, and I'm getting another dart to throw at the board, another lottery ticket that could potentially scratch off. So,
yeah, I like that idea too, because I've kind of hinted at a few times now, the Red Wings have done a nice job of building themselves up a nice cabinet of young prospects. I'm sure you saw McKean's just rated their prospect pool the first in the NHL. And that kind of gives them that opportunity now to be like, especially with as many forwards are in that 10 to 20 range that are of similar NHL floor caliber players. If they trade back, like you said, the ability to garner more picks on guys because the one thing I've learned through looking through this draft process as it stands right now is there's a lot of really good talent, but not a lot of talent that you just instantly fall in love with. Like last year, for instance, Scotty and I instantly fell in love with Oliver Moore, and he got picked up by the Blackhawks, and it broke our hearts. But like, hasn't been a guy yet that we've heard about that we were like, that's the guy that we want, which I think plays perfectly into your idea of trading that draft pick back and then maybe picking up a couple more picks for other guys that are of similar skill level, for the Red Wings to continue to build up that cabinet and give you options. Because remember, and I don't want to like dehumanize prospects, they're players, they're people, but they're also pieces for trades. And this is a team that's trying to make, take a step forward. And if you ever want to acquire somebody of current NHL caliber skill level, those pieces that you draft, all these prospects, this full cabinet, they get used. I mean, Ken Holland is famous for dumping the cabinet trying to win now, right? So there's a lot of things you can do by trading back and then acquiring more talent and getting that treasure chest more full.
Yeah, it's I'm a big believer that you don't know where and which player will hit in a draft. One of the things that Jim Nill, obviously, who is GM in Dallas but has his long ties to Detroit, one of the axioms that Jim Nill has about the draft, he always told me, was if you can get 3 players out of a draft, it's a great draft. And now that's a really like sobering thing to think about, right? Like, okay, every year we hear like, oh, they drafted 6-7 guys or whatever. Like, if 3 of those guys become NHL players, that's thrilling. So you don't know what and which guys. It's kind of trying to project what 18-year-old humans is going to do in any line of life is incredibly foolish work, right? Like it's trying to figure out all of this, and so that's why I like, if you can get 4 picks in the top 100 as opposed to 2 picks in the top 100 or whatever it is, right? Like, you're giving yourself a better chance of moving things around. That's why I didn't understand, like, so that Islanders Blackhawks trade a couple weeks back or whatever, that really weird one, like, I don't understand that from the Chicago perspective. Like, I don't understand why you give up to move up and you gave up extra like, it didn't make any sense to me. Or maybe it was the Islanders. Either way, one team that gave up. Yeah, one team moved up in the first a couple spots and gave up. I didn't understand that at all. So I from Detroit's perspective, if you can just start loading the cupboard, because you also don't know who else other teams like, right? So in the Calgary-Dallas trade, it's another trade I know well about, the Tanev trade. I personally, like, because I know a lot about the Dallas system. I don't think Grishnikov's an NHL prospect at all. Like, I really don't think I don't think he has a future in the NHL at all. Like, I saw him play in the AHL, I saw him play in the OHL, and I just don't see it. Apparently, Calgary really liked him. So, Dallas got Chris Tanev in without giving up any of their top 5 in their mind. You don't know. So, like, when you add other guys like this, you don't know what other teams' draft board is. At some point, there could be, like, you could have a struggling prospect in your system. And another team at a deadline could be trying to make a move. And they could come to you and be like, oh, we really like this guy. And you could be like, oh, cool. You can have that guy. You give yourself more options for things like that. And that's kind of the weird thing about prospecting and drafting and everything like that, because it's like a game. It's a massive game of poker, and everyone's got all these cards, and everyone has a different value for every single player. It's not like an ace is an ace. It's, well, an ace to this team is a 2 of hearts to the other team, or whatever. And it's a very weird thing. And so if you can have as many cards as possible, you're in a better spot to deal. So
it's more like Go Fish, where sometimes other teams need specifically what you have, but you don't need it.
Yes.
No, don't encourage Brian.
I said that specifically because I knew it would annoy Scotty.
Don't humor him. Don't agree to that.
Sean, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. I really appreciate it. We'd love to have you on again as the draft continues to come closer. We have, with the Red Wings picking at 15, there's umpteenth number of guys that could possibly fall or, reach for at that spot. So, yeah, again, thank you so much, and let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, I do have to give a quick plug to just with the Elite Prospects with the draft guide coming out Monday. That's something that the people there, they've done hours and hours and hours of work. I mean, that's a year-long. The process for the 2025 draft guide effectively starts Tuesday. So that's so I got to give a plug to my guys over there who are working on getting that out, guys and girls who are working on that. That'll come out Monday. For my own stuff, check out Prashant and I's show over at Expected by Whom. We got Ian Greengross on this week, who is a coach's agent, actually. He's an NFL player agent, but turned into a hockey coach's agent because, little known fact, in the NHL, you are not allowed to represent both players and coaches. You have to pick one or the other. And so we had a really interesting perspective from Ian this week over at Expected by Whom, kind of talking about the coaching carousel, how all of that changes, some nuances to how someone becomes a coach's agent. And I'll have some over at my own site, over at Shapshots, shapshotshockey.com. I've got some stuff that I made a couple trips out to Grand Rapids before they got knocked out to Milwaukee, and I got a couple of those things to kind of roll out as we kind of kill some of the June doldrums right now while we're waiting for the actual draft here.
How about Carter Mazur, man? I'm pumped about Carter Mazur. I'm so excited.
He's been a good player. I think that's been a really nice find for them.
Mm-hmm. Scotty, any final thoughts?
I don't think so, man. We ball.
We do ball. We'll be back with a new episode on Monday. Before we go, I want to make sure you guys know that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on Amazon Fire TV in the free TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus their national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. We'll be back again on Monday with a new episode, so stay tuned for that. Same time, same place. Oh, good Lord, can't talk. Your team every day.
Every day.